you're funky. Shake it. So funky that you just can't take it. Then go on. Use or lose your thing. You got to use or lose your thing.
This is all vegan place. You're vegetarian, right?
I am vegetarian. I'm looking forward to the vegan food, though. I try not to eat too much dairy.
How long have you been doing that?
Well, they always say that eating dairy isn't so great for singing.
Right, it's true. It actually is
so I
true.
just try to stay away from it. I love cheese, though, so I haven't been able to completely give it up.
I like good cheese, you know, like when you're in France.
Absolutely. The extra sharp, extra stinky.
Yeah, yeah, me too. The smellier, the better.
Right.
You spend some time in Paris, though,
I
right?
have spent some time in Paris. I spend probably a couple of weeks out of each year I go over there.
Oh, really?
Last year
Okay.
I went and I recorded part of my new record over there, so I spent quite a bit of time writing and also the recording. So yeah, I love
Very
Paris.
cool.
One of my favorite cities.
I was just there. I don't speak French at all.
At all?
No.
So
a
how do you
little bit of a time.
survive?
I feel sort of lonely there, but it's sort of a quiet
Right.
kind of loneliness,
Right,
you know?
I understand that. Travel in general.
Yeah.
One of the things I love to do when I'm touring or just traveling, like,
Yeah.
because you know when you're touring, you always have to remind yourself you're not on vacation.
Yes.
But
Yeah,
you want to
yeah.
have some sort of memento from the place.
Uh-huh.
So one of the sort of traditions that I do when I travel is I'll just go to like a vintage boutique in some whatever the city is that I'm in, or I'll try to connect with like an independent designer from the area and try to
that's
get like
cool.
a one, you know, like a one of the kind.
Get like one
Yeah.
piece from somewhere.
Yeah, and then you can be like, I got this in, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Vienna.
Yeah, exactly. It has the
I got
panache.
this in
But is it-
Niger.
But you play in Africa too.
Yes.
Yeah, because
Well,
I
I'm
saw.
from there.
Where are you from?
My father's side is from Rwanda. My mother's side is from Uganda, but I grew up in Illinois.
I mean, when you play in Africa, how do people respond to the music differently than they do in the United States?
When I play in East Africa, where I'm from, Uganda and Rwanda, people have a different sort of connection to it because obviously sometimes they can understand the lyrics or they can understand who I am, you know, and they kind of look at me as a daughter of their own, right? So there's sort of a sentimentality and a romantic connection that occurs between myself and the audience. When I first was going over there with my band to play, I remember feeling a bit nervous about it. My family was like, oh, you know, you have to play something that they can dance to, and they don't know jazz.
Right, yeah.
But I think we underestimate the African audience, we underestimate ourselves, and I think it's just a matter of exposing anyone to any kind of music and then letting the audience members figure out what resonates with them.
But like if you play in an English-speaking country, or just even just in a venue where there's a lot
Sure.
of, you know, English-speaking
Yeah.
people, as opposed to somewhere where there's not, do you find yourself making different set changes and stuff like that? Do you play the same set, or do you present the same music? Or?
Well, I definitely take into consideration who the audience is, no matter where I am.
Yeah.
Whether I'm even sometimes when I'm in Brooklyn versus Manhattan, you know?
Yeah.
So if I am in Africa, for example, they also speak English or they also speak French. So I do try to sing something that I know the majority of the people will at least be able to connect to lyrically in some way. So yeah, definitely take that into consideration, but still try to give the same type of show.
Sure.
You know?
I just toured over in Europe, and some of my songs are very storytelling. Like I'll play somewhere like in Germany, in Freiburg, and they not only speak English, but they speak English better than Americans, and they get nuances and ironies and stuff that American audiences don't always respond to, and that's great. Then I'll go to France, and I realize there's two things I can't do. I can't do the storytelling songs. I can't do the patter, you know, like in between song patter. And
Thank you.
I kind of like it in a way. Like it makes me rely less on that stuff, and you have to just like get the music going and just like circulate and get on this kind of meditation. And
That's interesting though, because it's sort of it's challenging the audience to focus on the other textures of the song.
and
Right.
getting yourself to focus
on those
on it
things
too. It's like,
right.
oh wow, you know, you're thinking the music in a totally different way. It's just all about harmony and melody and,
Yeah,
and
that's
nothing
great.
else. Yeah. I play solo. I'll play like 2.5 hours solo. You know.
Sure.
What is this?
It looks like the hijiki salad with edamame peas.
You mind if I have some of that?
Absolutely not.
Wow. Hijiki salad with edamame peas, just like Mom used to make.
Right. Right.
Awesome.
Where are you from?
Delaware.
Delaware.
Yeah.
So you guys
Do you
had
know
a lot
where
of
it is?
hijiki.
Yeah, a lot of hijiki and edamame peas, of course.
You're hilarious.
You grew up in Illinois mostly.
Illinois and Zen.
Where in Illinois?
Well, I grew up in Champaign and I went to school. My father was a professor at, I don't know if you know the school there, University of Illinois. It's in both Urbana and Champaign. And I also lived in Zambia for a few years of my life too.
When was that? Like what ages?
Between the ages of like 3 and 8.
Do you ever think about living there again, or?
Not so much Zambia, but I definitely want to move. I want to spend like half of my year in East Africa and the other half in New York or in Paris or somewhere else.
But so not in Zambia, but you would.
Not in Zambia. I would definitely love to live in either Rwanda or Uganda, where my families are.
Wow. Okay.
I have immediate family living over there, and I have a ton of cousins. I have like 50 cousins on my mom's side, and like both my parents' families are huge. So I have one grandparent who's still living, who's living in Uganda.
The 92-year-old grandmother, the picture on your website. Yeah.
Exactly.
She's beautiful.
She has
Yeah.
amazing
92
skin.
years old. I was really blown away. I looked at that picture. I actually blew it up. I increased it on my computer.
Yeah.
You know.
She just
to
turned
see.
93 in December, actually.
Wow.
Amazing. Actually,
Unbelievable.
the genes, yeah, because on my father's side, my grandfather supposedly lived well into his hundreds.
Really?
They actually don't know how old he was because in the village, like back in the day, they never, had birth certificates or anything like that. But he can recount certain sort of like colonial periods of history and say,
Wow.
oh, well, I was this old when this happened. And so the historians were like, well, that would make you 130, or like things like that.
Do you think he could have been?
I don't know.
Oh.
There was this whole discussion about whether or not we should like call Guinness.
Wow, that looks great. You call Guinness to see if he's like the oldest
But
man
then we were like, we
living?
don't want like his home to be like a circus and like people come to look for the oldest
Yeah, exactly.
man.
There he is. There he is. Get a picture of him. Come on. Wow.
So the longevity,
That's pretty
hopefully I
hardcore.
get some of that, yeah. This song is called Wallflower Blues.
They say that silence is golden, but she knows it can be blue. Well, our stories is dry, and there's just no getting through to you. These are the memories of a wallflower. If only she could reach for a new hand, a new dance, a new man. These are the memories of a wallflower, but she sits still, careful not to blush or stare. She waits for you, she waits for you, she waits for you. She waits for you, she waits for you, she waits for you. They say that silence is golden, but she knows it can be blue. Well, all the stories is dry, and there's just no getting through to you. These are the memories of the wallflower, ready to unveil a plaster gown and lay down her concrete heart. These are the memories of a wallflower, for the fall. Ask her to dance and she'll be sweet. Ask her to dance and you'll fly away. Ask her to dance and she'll be sweet. Ask her to dance and you'll fly away. She waits for you. 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 By silence is golden. She knows it can be blue. By silence is golden. She knows it can be blue.
So your music, I love it because it's in 4/4 the whole way through. I actually counted it out because the rhythms were so counteracting to the downbeat. I thought it was in an odd time signature, yeah. Where does that come from for you? Is that just from music school or?
Probably a combination of things. I actually didn't go to music school. I did study privately most of my life. I played the cello from the time I was about 8 through college, and I've always been involved in like choir and all of those things, musical theater, those sort of things. And I also was exposed to a lot of Western classical music, having studied the cello, and also my mother was, or she is, a huge opera fan.
Oh, really? The opera thing is interesting because the sound of your voice is very soft. Like, you don't go for the big, huge high note or something like that. Your thing is much more chilled out than that.
It's interesting because this record, it was something sort of struggled with in terms of the approach. And what we decided to do was focus more on nuance. Kind of coming from a more intimate place and trying to create a more intimate experience with the listener.
You sing a little harder in the live show?
I wouldn't say harder, but I would say definitely I have, I do project a lot more than I am on that record. And that's something I really, really struggled with.
But it's a record, and sometimes with a record you just you go in a certain direction and try to hang with that for a while.
Exactly, and it actually has worked in a way because what it does, it gives me a ton of room to open up in the live context, and it just creates more of that show energy for somebody who's just listened to the record all the time, and then they come in and they're like, oh.
They get a little something different.
Yeah, they can get the music and the song, but they get like a lot of sort of, I don't know, dynamics, basically, and fireworks.
Yeah, I've toured with Nora Jones a couple of times, and she sings very softly in the studio. She hits the mic really soft. And then in the live show, it's hard for her to get the monitors where she needs them to be because she's kind of like really chill, and the place is big and the sound's going all over the place. It's hard for her to hear herself.
Right.
So it's interesting to see in one medium how it just responds so magnificently. In the other medium, it can be such a headache to get it to happen.
It's a delicate balance.
Yeah.
But then I was always sort of surrounded by a lot of traditional African music.
What's traditional African music?
It could be traditional Rwandese music, which is a lot of stuff is in 5/8 or 6/8, and those sort of things are mostly played at like parties or rites of passage, wedding or an engagement ceremony or something like that, which obviously you don't go to every day, but you hear it on occasion, and you do hear the music at home.
Yeah.
And I also grew up around a lot of like Central African pop music. So my parents played a lot of that. Like that was sort of like their pop music.
That's just kind of in the blood, like the way my mom played bluegrass in the house, and it's
Probably.
just you know all of it just osmotically.
Yeah,
or something.
probably exactly. So that
But then
would
you
be a
have the
certain
lyrical
influence.
thing that I don't always hear in African music. Like I notice in a lot of the stuff that I get exposed to anyway, the lyrics will repeat themselves a lot, or there'll be like a chant, or there'll be just something that, like kind of a meditation that people.
Yeah.
And your thing is it's a little bit more cerebral and a little bit more American in that
Well,
kind
that's
of way.
obviously I grew up mostly here.
I mean, you write lyrics in different
In different languages.
In different languages. It's the small words. And I was actually appreciating the avocado. I was like, you write lyrics in different, I like corn and avocado. But I have ADD like that, so don't mind me.
No, it's cool. I do primarily write in English, but I also write in Swahili and Kinyarwanda and Rutoro. My Kinyarwanda and Rutoro, Kinyarwanda is the language they speak in Rwanda, and Rutoro is the language that my mother's family, our language in the western part of Uganda. Sometimes I'll call my parents or family for help with the translation. You know, if I'm like getting caught with like some poetry I'm trying to convey, or and so if you look at the liner notes of the record, like oftentimes if I'm doing something in Kinyarwanda or in Rutoro where I'm not as strong, then I often give them credit as well for the lyrics.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
The stuff in Swahili, I studied Swahili like for 4 years, 8 semesters in college, and it's melodic.
It's a beautiful word, even just like that. It really is.
And Swahili is actually an Arabic word, which means coast. And so literally the Swahili people just mean the people of the coast. But it's actually become the 7th most widely spoken language in the world. It's spoken in about 10 African countries, which is why I wanted to study the language anyway.
Because you can get around over there in a lot of different places.
About 10, like
it's like
10
learning
different
Spanish
countries.
or something in Europe. You can speak it pretty much anywhere.
Like if you're on the border and you need to get across, you can drop some Swahili. And you'll be okay.
If you're translating, if you write in English and then you translate to Swahili, how do you know you're finding the exact right? Do you make exceptions to just find a word that'll flow better with the music, or do you try to find the exact word that means the exact thing definition-wise?
Well, what I do try to honor is what is it that this song, sounds like? What is it that the meaning might sound like? Does it feel more like I want to say it in Swahili? There's certain things that I'm saying in Swahili that it just feels like that's the language that I need to say.
So you're trying to find the essence of it as opposed to the literal.
Yeah, and it's not even so much about, I have this song I want to write about, and then therefore let me choose the language. It's more about the language or the lyrics come to me, and they might come in English, they might come in Swahili.
So your Swahili is so present, like just even on your frontal lobes, that you might just break into that if you're working on a song. It's not like a conscious.
I mean, I'm not as fluent, obviously, as I am in English, but it definitely is something that will come to me totally just in Swahili at times. With this last record, it is predominantly in English, and I struggled with that because my record before was like half English, half Swahili, half some little bit of Kinyarwanda. And I was like, are people going to really know who I am? I had this thing of like, let me put forth my entire identity as this African woman who came of age in Illinois and lives in New York and Zambia and Kenya or whatever.
It's a tall order for one record, though. Sometimes the whole picture comes forth over all the records of the catalog.
What I realized is I don't have to put that picture forth just in the lyrics. There are other subtleties. When you were saying earlier, like you were hearing an odd meter thing, but it's actually 4/4. So I think I approach the songwriting in the same way that I had to understand that it's not about writing in a language to say, well, this means, therefore, that I'm a transnational African woman.
It's about something more organic than that, or just something that's expressive.
And it's also about the stories, right? If I'm telling a story in English, but maybe I'm talking about a homeless Senegalese man in Paris who's an immigrant experience, in one of those songs, then hopefully people understand why I have that perspective, and then they're curious to understand who I am as an artist as well.
Very cool. Well, hey, it was really fun hanging out.
It was fun hanging out with you, too.
All right.
Thank you so much. The food was amazing.
The song is called Enganjani. It's a word in my mother's language, Rutoro, which means most beloved. And this song is about being haunted by your most beloved. I can see the spaces, old and familiar faces. Somebody heard me cry. Was it the angel I saw walking by, 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 by? and blue pillows. Somebody heard my prayer. Was it the moon humming over there? Ghost lover, hold my hand. Flash flood warning and the chase to sand. Ghost lover, push against my back. The grass is green where the sidewalk cracks. I know it's you, Enganjani. It was always you,
Rooftop, water tower, sky. Clip clop, a carriage winding by, and you can't remember why. At your window, no, you can't remember why.
Check, please.